Hello again, Steve here, and today I wanted to make a few comments along the lines of how can they get away with it? Well, this is along the lines of what I've been following recently about how Rebel News, Ezra Levant, he put out a book during the Canadian election, and he is now it's almost like the Gestapo is after him. They're accusing him of all kinds of things, even though in their very own letters and so on, they basically say that he did nothing wrong, but they're hounding him and they're going to cost him tens of thousands of dollars probably. So the question is, how do they get away with this? How do these people get away with hounding those who just disapprove or disagree with them? Well, probably many ways, but there's a concept. It's called sedevacantism. And this I learned about through followers of the Catholic religion who very much disagree with Pope Francis. They believe that he's not a real pope or something like that. And what sedevacantism means, that along the lines, I could be wrong, you could correct me if I'm wrong here. I believe it's from the word sedevacante, which is, I believe, I'm not pronouncing it right probably, but it's Latin. Sede apparently means chair, and vacante means vacant. So it basically means vacant chair. So if you have an organization that has a vacant chair, it means it has no leadership. It has no legitimate leadership. So what these people who believe that Pope Francis is illegitimate, they say the chair is empty. I mean, there's an impostor there. And the reason they say that is, I believe, is because he's there because of some sort of fraud that went on, or some sort of, the rules to get there were not followed, in other words, at some point. And or what he's doing is illegitimate. He's pointing this way when everybody else is pointing that way or whatever. It's funny thing of it is, I'll go on a bit of a rant here, but the Catholics believe that the Pope, in certain instances, is infallible. In other words, when he's talking, God is talking. So this Pope, he'll say something that's completely counter to what other popes have said. And my question is, I don't know if he's supposed to be infallible at this point, but if those guys were infallible, and you're saying exactly the opposite, like, does just human nature change? Did God change his mind? It's bizarre anyways. But that's for another time, perhaps. But we could learn something from this concept. At least it's a bit soothing, which is to say that the guy people who are sitting in government very often are illegitimate. They're there by fraud, by deception, by all sorts of things, but they're not there for the reason that the institution of that organization was originally formed. And there's a concept in law, once again, not an expert in law, just heard these things, got a rough idea, maybe get some ideas going. There's de facto and de jure, or de facto and de jure, I'm not sure how it's pronounced. De facto, once again, another Latin word, I believe it means of fact, which means that you can have a governor, a president, a pope, and so on, who is de facto sitting in the chair. It's the fact that they're there. They're occupying that office. That there's somebody actually occupying it. But they're not de jure. In other words, jure means of justice, of the right way, in other words. So, let's say somebody in an extreme, somebody comes along and sacks the place and kills off the administration and sits in the chair. They're de facto sitting in the chair. It's fact that they're there, but they're there illegitimately because the organization that was established, calling itself whatever, the papal realm, the government, whatever it is, did not consider this procedure to be one of the procedures to occupy the chair. So you take a guy like Trudeau. I mean, if you really follow it through, and the shenanigans that go on in government, not only Trudeau, but lots and lots of governors, right? Because things get more and more corrupt over time. They're not really there de jure, are they? In fact, I believe, I'll have to check this up. But apparently, the Governor General of Canada is called the de facto leader, which means if they're de facto, why aren't they saying de jure? It's bizarre, right? It's bizarre. I think it's because perhaps because the Bill of Rights says that Canada is a nation of free men. I mean, if there's free men, you don't have a queen, you don't have a governor, you don't have any ruler who would rule over you, unless you submit to that, I guess. But that's for another time. It's very interesting. But it's also a way to soothe ourselves, I think, at times, to consider this idea of de jure, de facto, and sedevacantism, which, when we ask ourselves, how the hell do these people get away with this? Like, why are they doing this? Well, maybe one answer is because they're not legitimate. They're not legitimate. If they didn't get there legitimately, how in the hell do we expect them to act legitimately and act nobly? I think that's a tough call and a tall, tall order indeed. What can we learn from this? Well, I think it's just observing the organizations that we might be involved in and realizing, okay, what is the legitimate purpose of this? And is this individual actually, for the most part, acting out and behaving along the lines of what this organization was established for? And if that person ain't, then there might be a case for sede vacante. The seat is vacant. De jure or de facto, somebody's sitting in it, but it's not of jure, it's not de jure, and it's, like the Latins would say, sede vacante. Steve here, Grand Great Chatting. If you like what I'm doing, please like, subscribe, and share, and we'll talk again soon. Now, one last thing. Somebody was asking me if I was going to do a live stream at some point, and just a real brief one here. I guess the answer right now is no, because I don't have a lot of interaction going on. There's 300 and some subs. Bless you to the bottom of my heart, those of you who subscribe and keep active in here. And I just don't really want to do a live stream and have like nobody show up. So if enough of you people chime in and say, hey, let's have a coffee chat online, then we'll figure out a way to do it. Until then, I'll just let you folks be the lead on that. Talk in soon. Bye for now.